Good morning, fifth graders. Happy Monday. Welcome back to another reading lesson. I hope you had a fabulous weekend. Let's go ahead and let's get started with some reading. So today we're going to be taking a look at characters in our literary text. So those are our fictional texts. And we're going to be more specifically taking a look at the problems or the challenges that our characters encounter and how they respond to those challenges or how they respond to those problems. So let's take a look. We're going to go and we're going to revisit Thank You, Mr. Falker by Patricia Polacco that we've used in lessons past. So let's go ahead and take a look at Trisha and see some of the challenges she encounters and how she responds to those challenges. All right, let's take a look at a passage from Thank You, Mr. Falker. I have it up on the screen, so I'd like for you to follow along as I read. And as I'm reading, I really want us to think about, okay, who is the character? And then in this case, what is the challenge? So what is the challenge or the problem that the character is facing? And I'm going to let you in on a little hint. There's actually two challenges that we're going to address. All right, so here we go. The teacher smiled at them when they put all the sounds together and got a word right. But when Trisha looked at a page, all she saw were wiggling shapes. And when she tried to sound out words, the other kids laughed at her. Trisha, what are you looking at in that book, they'd say. I'm reading, she'd say back to them. But her teacher would move on to the next person. Always when it was her turn to read, her teacher had to help her with every single word. And while the other kids moved up into the second reader and the third reader, she stayed alone in our neighborhood. Trisha began to feel different. She began to feel dumb. All right, so as I took a look at that and I was reading, it's clear that our character is Trisha. So that's who we're going to be talking about. And Trisha has also encountered two challenges. When I was reading this, the first challenge that I noticed was that Trisha couldn't read. And I know that's because if I go back in the text, it says, but when Trisha looked at a page, all she saw were wiggling shapes. That shows me right there, that's a red flag that she can't read. If she's seeing wiggling shapes, she definitely is having an issue with reading. Then let's talk about her response to the fact that she couldn't read. What did she say or do to because she couldn't read? Well, honestly, she was very defensive with the other kids because they were saying, Trisha, what are you looking at in the back of the book? They'd say. And she said, I'm reading with an exclamation point. So she was like, I'm reading. What do you think I'm doing? So she was very defensive. All right, so I told you there was going to be two challenges in this passage for Trisha. And the other challenge comes into the fact that the kids were making fun of her. That is definitely a challenge, and you all probably know what some of that feels like, because I'm sure someone in your life has made fun of you for some of you. So the kids were making fun of her. And I know that if I go back in the text, I can prove that because they said right here, it said the other kids laughed at her. So they were clearly making fun of her and the fact that she couldn't read. So then how did Trisha respond to that challenge? I think this part is really actually really sad. You know, she could have responded to this in a multitude of ways, but if you go back in the text, it says Trisha began to feel different. She began to feel dumb. So she really doubted herself. She had self-doubt, and she began to believe what the other kids were saying. She began to believe that she was dumb.
Hi, Mr. Denison here, not Ms. Vandy. Mr. Denison. We're going to look at one more quick example of what happens with Trisha. And what I'd like you to do, and we're going to talk about this in small groups. You're going to read it here. It's going to pop up on your screen. It'll stay there for about 1 minute so you have a chance to read it. When we start our small groups, we'd like to talk about how you think Trisha is going to handle this next problem that comes up. It's as we start to learn about characters, we start to learn the different ways that they will handle problems, and eventually if those problems are handled differently, that tells us something about a character, or we start to see a pattern with the way a character handles a problem, and ultimately the larger problem in the story reveals itself. So it's important that we're learning here what fits within Trisha's character, and we can start to see why she's acting a certain way, or start to figure out how she's going to act. So this next, I'm going to read it here for just a moment. It's going to pop up next. It says, but the nicer Mr. Falker was to Trisha, the worse Eric treated her. Oh, Eric. You're not going to look back on these years fondly, buddy. You're going to look back and like, hey, remember that girl Trisha? I was so mean to her. I know, bud. I know. You're a grown man looking back where you treated that poor girl. Sorry, keep reading. He got all the other kids to wait for her on the playground or the cafeteria or even in the bathroom, and to jump out and call out her stupid or ugly. And Trisha began to believe them. So, that's pretty rough. How does Trisha handle this? Without reading forward, we have seen how Trisha has handled previous problems. How do we think Trisha will handle this problem? And then we'll reveal the truth to you, how she handles it. And then we have a couple problems that Trisha has handled, and the ways that Trisha's handled it, that can also tell us what we know about this character. So getting to really know a character, such an important skill in your life. You cannot just know one thing about a person and think you know everything about them. Oh, that's how nastiness happens in this world. You have to see how people respond here, and respond here, and respond here, and how that builds them into a person. Trisha's being built here as a person. We really want to know about her. That means more than just one situation. So, I've talked for 2 minutes now. Y'all got me ranting and talking. Read this. It'll pop up here. And then